इस वक्त जो सिचुएशन हम देख रहे हैं वो बड़ी ही पेचीदा हो चुकी हुई है, खास तौर पे इस हवाले से कि वहाँ पे जो कश्मीर में मामला चल रहे हैं वो बहुत ज्यादा ह्यूमन राइट्स के हवाले से भी देखा जाए तो बहुत पेचीदा हो चुके हुए हैं। वहाँ पे जो डोमिसाइल लॉ आ चुका हुआ है उसकी वजह से बहुत ज्यादा लोगों को इनसिक्योरिटी फील हो रही है। और साथ साथ ये जो गलवान और लद्दाख का इशू चल रहा है उसकी वजह से भी लोग परेशान हैं कि अब नेक्स्ट क्या होगा। एक अनसर्टेनिटी की सिचुएशन है। सारी की सारी सिचुएशन को आप कैसे ले रहे हैं, किस तरह आप रीड कर रहे हैं जर्मनी में बैठ के?
देखिए, इसमें एक चीज़ है जो ह्यूमन राइट्स वायलेशन हो रहे हैं या जो एनकाउंटर्स अभी आपने रिसेंटली सुना, इवन इंडियन आर्मी ने वो एडमिट किया दैट दोज वर एनकाउंटर्स, तो बट दोज आर नॉट न्यू। तो एनकाउंटर्स तो कश्मीर में इससे रेगुलर, इट हैज बीन अ रेगुलर फीचर सिंस 1989. So but what is new is that the total impunity and no accountability, because there is no civilian government, there is no civilian administration, so everything, so there is no transparency. One doesn't know who actually is doing these things, and if these things are happening, where should people go to for redressal? redressal. और जो अभी आपने वो जिक्र किया उसका डोमिसाइल लॉ का, that's a total, that's a उसको डकैती कह सकते हैं आप। उसमें ऐसा है, इन्होंने आर्टिकल 370, जैसे लास्ट टाइम भी बात की थी, आर्टिकल 370 को इनऑपरेट कर दिया, and also they abrogated article 35A, under which the domicile of the state was restricted to only to the inhabitants of the place. Now they have issued new laws for domicile. Anyone can apply for those for the residency of the state. But and that's just like that's a उसमें ये है, anybody who has lived in state for 10 years or 15 years can apply for, and the requirements are very flimsy. So
और उसमें राजीव भाई, ये जो सूरत हाल आप बता रहे हैं इसमें जो लोग वहां पे रह रहे हैं और जिसमें 1.7 मिलियन तो तकरीबन वो हैं जो कि पुराने वहां पे रह रहे हैं, वो लोग भी वहां पे डोमिसाइल लेके जमीन खरीद सकते हैं, सब कुछ कर सकते हैं, बल्कि जो कश्मीरी खुद हैं उनके लिए डोमिसाइल सर्टिफिकेट लेना बहुत मुश्किल हो गया हुआ है। इज दैट ट्रू?
आई डोंट नो अबाउट दैट, लेकिन ये चीज है कि इन्होंने कैसा वो दे हैव ओपन द डोर, एनीबॉडी कैन कम एंड गेट अ डोमिसाइल, एंड that's from the time of application to the issuance of the certificate, they have given 2 weeks to the officials. If they don't do it, the officials will be charged, they will be fined up to a very large amount. So that means that anybody who applies, they will get this domicile certificate within weeks. अब नॉर्मली आप उस सब कॉन्टिनेंट के सेटअप पे देखिए, when somebody applies for anything, it takes months and months. But in this particular case, the Indian government has asked those administrators who are responsible for the issuance of those certificates, they should expedite within 2 weeks, failing which they will be charged for negligence. So which is the basically that means is that they are opening the Kashmir particularly, opening it for demographic change. That's just like, we should not be under any illusion. That has been their aim throughout. That
ठीक
has been the aim of Modi. As I said, that Kashmir has always been maltreated by every Indian government.
हम्म,
But this government has completely different sets of ambitions.
हम्म.
And
क्या
those,
एम्बिशन है?
the ambition is basically to change the demography of Kashmir,
हम्म,
to make it to turn मुस्लिम मेजॉरिटी इन कश्मीर टू माइनर. और उसके बाद आप देख लीजिए, उसके बाद ये जो व्हाट दे आर डूइंग विद द लैंग्वेज. So Hindi becomes compulsory for
हम्म,
everyone.
हम्म.
So so many are, and they are changing names of the places. They are changing this official nomenclature, which is being changed into Hindi-based nomenclature. So these are consequential changes. These
तो
are,
ये जो मनोज सिन्हा साहब जो हैं, जिनको बना के वहां पे गवर्नर भेजा गया है, हु इज अ फॉर्मर बीजेपी मिनिस्टर एंड
जी
बाय द वे हु वाज टिप्ड टू बी द चीफ मिनिस्टर ऑफ इंडियाज नॉर्दर्न स्टेट ऑफ उत्तर प्रदेश इन
yes
2017 बिफोर योगी आदित्यनाथ, आपको पता ही है.
जी.
तो क्या इनका ये मैंडेट है कि जाके इसकी डेमोग्राफी को चेंज कर दें और मुस्लिम्स को मिनोरिटी में तब्दील कर दें, और जितनी जल्दी हो सकता है ये मिशन कंप्लीट करके तो हमें रिपोर्ट बैक करें?
Uh, the persons are inconsequential.
हम्म,
But the person does not matter who.
हम्म,
So the last one, the previous lieutenant. So पहले तो just let's think about it.
हम्म.
So it was a state. State used to have a governor,
ठीक.
and there used to be a state elected government in the state.
हम्म,
Now the state has been reduced to a union territory,
ठीक.
and which is headed by lieutenant governor.
हम्म,
So with much reduced power. So, and with no state legislature at the moment.
ठीक.
And that means all the powers actually reside in the central government.
हम्म,
So it doesn't matter who is the lieutenant governor. Actually, all the decisions are being made in the central government,
बाय द सेंटर. हम्म,
by the center, in the
हम्म,
central government, in the central secretariat, and
ठीक.
all the, और वैसे भी जो इन्होंने बीजेपी की गवर्नमेंट में, all those bureaucrats, they belong to this, they are affiliated with this ideology,
हम्म,
this hardcore Hindu ideology.
हम्म,
So they every day they are passing some laws like the domicile law. So this becomes a headline, but one has to see in the background, they are every day passing one or the other law which is diminishing the basics, characteristics of the place. So
हम्म.
that's
तो इसमें राजीव साहब मुझे ये बताएं कि अब जब आप कहते हैं कि हिंदू आइडियोलॉजी, आप
hmm.
खुद एक हिंदू हैं और आप उसी मजहब से ताल्लुक रखते हैं, तो जब आप हिंदू आइडियोलॉजी की बात करते हैं तो इससे आपकी क्या मुराद है? व्हाट डू यू
It
मीन?
देखिए, people use the term Hindutva. That is this just it's uh, it's just like a basic fascist ideology. In real words, it's a fascist ideology. One leader, just like some mythological some nation which actually never existed. So just going back to that, so reverting India to that nation which actually never existed, but it exists in their heads. So that's the fundamental problem, and that is how actually India has been going since 2014, and it just got aggravated once Modi got a bigger majority in 2019. So
ठीक.
they had the possibility of maneuver all these legislations in the parliament, particularly in the upper house, where earlier they did not have majority. And actually, now if one looks with the benefit of hindsight, they could have done it even in after 2018, because this opposition, they crawled over each other to support government on this issue, barring few opposition members. Everybody else, they just went over and supported government on Kashmir issue. And that has been the fundamental problem with Kashmir issue right from the beginning, because whenever Kashmiris asked for us Indian government for a solution, every government and every member of the opposition party, they were always restrained by this within the framework of Indian constitution.
हाँ, हाँ,
So that's why there was never any progress on this issue.
ठीक है। तो क्या आपकी अपनी रीडिंग क्या है? क्या मोदी साहब जो हैं वो इसमें कामयाब हो जाएंगे? जो भी आप कह रहे हैं कि जो उनका मिशन है उसमें उसको डेमोग्राफिक को चेंज करने में, बाकी चीजों के चेंज करने में हो जाएंगे, while the international public opinion is sleeping, nobody is bothered about it? तो क्या ये पॉसिबल है कि वो कर लें, इसको
So
अचीव कर लें?
इनकी strategy है ना, they do so many things at a time. They are doing it so many things. कश्मीर में आर्टिकल 370 को इनॉपरेट किया, देन आर्टिकल 35 को एब्रोगेट किया, और अभी उसका वो चल ही रहा था, उसके साथ साथ वो सिटीजनशिप अमेंडमेंट एक्ट ले आए,
वो आ गया।
वो आ गया. So that added, so because when people were still talking about Kashmir, and then that came, and that was from the perspective of Indian Muslims, that is an even bigger issue. Not that Kashmir is not an issue, bigger issue, but because if that Citizenship Amendment Act is read in conjunction with their proposed national registry, so that would mean in principle that basically they can render any Indian Muslim stateless. आप किसी को भी आप कह दीजिए कि अपनी आप प्रूव करिए सिटीजनशिप,
वो तो सारे इंडियन मुस्लिम्स के लिए ऊपर अप्लाई करेगा ना?
हाँ, बिकॉज उसमें क्योंकि सिटीजनशिप अमेंडमेंट एक्ट में ये है, so only restriction is only for Muslims.
Right.
So Hindus, whether they are coming from Afghanistan, Pakistan, or Bangladesh, they will get the citizenship. So that means even within India, if any Hindu is living who cannot prove, but that he or she will be covered under that act. So it's only those Muslims who will not be able to prove any documentary proof of their Indian citizenship. They will become stateless, and that's why they had already started building up those detention centers. So they implemented that in Assam, and they had detained many people there. So these kind of this is a typical fascist tactic to do one egregious thing after another, so that one doesn't know where to pay attention.
लेकिन एक चीज जो है राजीव साहब, वो ये हुई है जो कि अनएक्सपेक्टेड फॉर इंडियन एस्टेब्लिशमेंट इंक्लूडिंग द प्राइम मिनिस्टर, वो ये हुई कि 370 और उसके 35A के रेवोकेशन के बाद चाइना आ गया। अब चाइना ने जो लद्दाख का इशू वहां पे क्रिएट हुआ, फिर ये अभी तक पैंगोंग सो का चल रहा है, डेप्सेंग पे हो गया, फिर आपको पता ही है जो भारतीय वजीर दिफा हैं, डिफेंस मिनिस्टर साहब, उन्होंने खुद ये कहा है कि 38,000 square kilometers of our land has been captured by the Chinese. So how big it is, how relevant it is in the overall picture?
एक मिनट, बिफोर आई आंसर दैट क्वेश्चन, मैं आपको उससे पहले बिफोर चाइना it was COVID which intervened.
ठीक.
This
that was also unexpected.
Pandemic. So which put brakes to this Citizenship Amendment Act, and this because they were already planning to introduce in Parliament this national public registration. So that put, yes, then then of course, as you mentioned, then China came. The reason, there's a big background about that. So the boundary between China and India is not demarcated, barring it,
हम्म,
and
हम्म,
it's a 2,500 kilometer long boundary.
किलोमीटर ठीक ठीक
So on the east, it's a McMahon line,
हम्म,
and west is so that has been like it was that dispute dates back from very earlier times. So
1960 के बाद हाँ ज्यादा
it even 1950s.
हाँ
So in 1950 59, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Zhou Enlai,
wrote a letter actually
the then Chinese Prime Minister,
हम्म,
he had proposed that China would recognize this McMahon line
हम्म,
on the eastern side
ठीक
in lieu of this Aksai Chin,
हम्म,
which was already under Chinese control. Because
ठीक
Aksai Chin was never under Indian control.
हम्म,
It was just this boundary drawn by some British official bureaucrat, putting that Aksai Chin under the state of Jammu and Kashmir, but
हम्म,
it never actually under Indian possession. So that was the quid pro quo offered by Chavan to Nehru, and for some reasons, Indian bureaucrats advised Nehru to not to accept that.
हम्म,
So they thought they have a very strong case. And then they started following this forward policy. They
ठीक
started sending their army to the places where they thought belongs to India, because British had drawn their lines there.
ठीक
So it was in response to that. Mao Zedong himself intervened. He called his three army commanders, his field marshals, to that it's time to bring India to negotiating table by teaching them a lesson.
अच्छा
That's so, and he told them, just we don't. China does not want any further territory, but India should come to negotiating table. This has been written by Henry Kissinger in his book on China. So this
अच्छा
is so that is when this 1962 war, and in 1962, neither India was in no position to fight a war, and even China was not a
interested in
strong power
हम्म,
at that time.
हम्म, हम्म,
So, but what Indian government, Indian establishment fails to understand the Chinese way of thinking.
हम्म,
They can, I mean, they can put 1 million soldiers on one front, and
हाँ
that will, and they were able to drive out American occupation forces from North Korea, just
right
on the sheer basis of the strength of their army.
आर्मी हाँ
So
PLA
anyway, so after 1962, this Aksai Chin remained under China, and then China occupied some more area, but it retreat. It gave back a lot of territory that their soldiers had captured at that time.
हम्म,
Even in east, they retreated. So, but the border remained undemarcated.
हम्म,
And this continued, and India and China did not have even diplomatic relations for a very long time, and it was only in late 70s when diplomatic relations were established, and for the first time an Indian prime minister went to China was in 1987 when Rajiv Gandhi went to China. So then there were these informal agreements 93, 96, that the current position will be accepted as the line of actual control.
एक्चुअल कंट्रोल ठीक
Actual
ठीक
control.
हम्म,
So, and China considers Ladakh as and Ladakh in its entirety as
their own territory.
extension of Tibetan
Hmm,
culture.
hmm, hmm.
So not necessarily territory, but somehow it feels affinity to that area.
Tibet culture.
So and now when India unilaterally changed the status of Jammu and Kashmir, it turned Ladakh into a union territory. So that was one point which did not go well with China.
Hmm,
And but most importantly, India aligned itself too closely to Trump administration.
hmm.
And they went around in the world in every international forum condemning China, accusing China for this spreading of this coronavirus.
Coronavirus. Huh.
So naturally, if you have a neighbor, you are sharing a border,
Hmm,
undemarcated border of 2,500 kilometers, and then you go around poking it all the time,
huh.
it's not going to end up very well. So
Absolutely.
just like it's a very logical.
Hmm.
So so now it's we know that what happened in very recent past. So there was one incident.
लेकिन लेकिन डॉक्टर अजीब मुझे ये बताएं कि 38,000 square kilometers, it's not a small territory.
But when they say 38,000, that they talk about the Xinjiang also. No, sorry, they talk about Aksai Chin also. But Aksai Chin is not. Aksai Chin has never been part of
Never
India.
been part of India.
So they also
हाँ.
talk about this territory which they say Pakistan ceded to China. So
नहीं,
they
वो तो उन्होंने सेपरेटली बात की कि जी 5,000 ऑड किलोमीटर्स वो पाकिस्तान ने उनको दे दी,
अच्छा
ठीक है. बट
but
उन्होंने ये कहा कि 38,000 मैं मैं आपको अगर मुझे पता होता मैं आपको वो ऑडियो सुना देता कि
yeah,
उन्होंने
no,
खुद कहा कि 38,000 स्क्वायर किलोमीटर्स हैज बीन कैप्चर्ड.
I know that's it. But in the recent starting from April until now, China has moved about 1,000 square kilometer into Indian territory or the territory which was held by India because the place is disputed. So you cannot say whether it's Indian or it's Chinese. So it's just like because the border was never settled. So whatever settlement was done, it was done by British with Tibet. So Tibet is no longer autonomous region. It's it's a part of China. So and when British did this agreement with Tibet, that was under caution because Tibet was a weaker power, and the Chinese representatives refused to sign that at that time. So, but I still think because the things were not so bad because India still has a very big trade with China, and things were going quite well between India and China. But it was this hubris of Indian government to alter the status of Ladakh from Chinese point of view. And then there is another thing that uh, when they talk about taking back Aksai chain from China
हाँ, अमित शाह की स्टेटमेंट जो थी.
and POK from Pakistan and they don't stop at Azad Kashmir. They also talk about
गिलगित बल्तिस्तान.
Gilgit-Baltistan. So in Gilgit-Baltistan historically was never any dispute because it's the moment of the partition it immediately joined Pakistan. So there was never any
Dispute about it.
about that.
अच्छा अच्छा, एक और चीज जो आपने यू एक्चुअली यू केप्ट मेंशनिंग अबाउट दिस तिब्बत थिंग, जो टिबेटन जो इशू है उसके ऊपर आप देखें ना कि जो भी रिसेंटली जब सोल्जर डाइड और उसके ऊपर बीजेपी के सेक्रेटरी जनरल साहब जो हैं वो वहां पे जाते हैं उसकी फ्यूनरल के ऊपर, तो और वो एसएसएफ वो जो है फ्रंटियर फोर्स वो जो उसका सामने आया कि ये एक पूरी इस तरह की एक फोर्स बनाई हुई है इंडिया ने जो कि टिबेटन्स जो एग्जाइल्स हैं उनके ऊपर वो कंसिस्ट ऑफ करती है. तो व्हाट मैसेज एक्चुअली द चाइनीज गॉट उन्होंने ये देखा कि भाई जो ये टिबेटन्स को लेके अगर हमारे साथ उनको लड़वा रहे हैं तो दैट इज अगेंस्ट इवन दी यूएन रेजोल्यूशंस, यूएन चार्टर के खिलाफ है। तो उसको एक्सक्यूज बना के भी चाइना जो है वो अपनी टेरिटरी के लिए अकॉर्डिंग टू द यूएन स्पिरिट जो है उसके ऊपर वो अटैक कर सकता है।
That's that's a very valid point, because
हाँ,
they Indians, they don't know diplomacy. They don't know what diplomacy means. They don't know strategy. They just have some. They use some tactics. Just one here, one there. So how could this such an act go well with the Chinese establishment?
हाँ, हाँ,
And again, the point, we come back to the same point. India shares 2,500-kilometer border, and they can create hell for India at any point.
हाँ,
And China of 2020 is many more times advanced than India. This technologically they are much ahead. Their scientific
absolutely.
research, they are almost competing with United States now.
हाँ,
The number of scientific papers published is reaching almost the levels of United States. India is on that front far behind.
हम्म, हम्म,
And then also Chinese have advantage that on the Tibetan side, they are all this, they have well established logistical all this logistics sport, it's everything. It's because they have been developing Tibet for quite many years now.
हम्म,
So on this side, India has a very difficult terrain to defend.
हाँ, हाँ,
So and then there's one more important thing which I think Indian establishment also does. For the past now starting from 1990 until now, for the past 30 years, Indian army has been mired in fighting insurgency.
हम्म,
So as this Indian defense analyst Praveen Sani, he keeps on repeating this point,
हम्म,
that Indian army is not at the moment capable of fighting a war,
हम्म,
because they have been put in civilian defense and fighting insurgents, and and that has also resulted many Indian this Indian army high official getting mired into this this what we call as this in conflicts where the civilians have been killed in fake encounters. So there was a time when Indian Army general, this Indian Army generals used to be war heroes. Now when these Indian Army generals are promoted, so they have blot on their records. They have been involved in some one or the other kind of this fake encounter or something like that.
हाँ,
So India is lot of disadvantage, and on the top of that, this toxic ideology that has taken over India since
हम्म।
since mid 80s.
And
So
that
that
is Hindutva's
yes, that
ideology.
that's the root cause of all these problems. So every institution, including army, it has been saffronized.
Hmm.
Courts have been rendered useless in India. So it's a very difficult. And
Tragic
now
state of affairs.
this the way India has handled COVID, it's disgraceful, it's shameful, it's it is a copybook example of how not to
Hmm.
handle a pandemic.
लेकिन लेकिन डॉक्टर अजीब, जब आप जर्मनी में बैठे हुए, बीइंग एन इंडियन, जब आप वहां पे ये सब कुछ देख रहे हैं, तो व्हाट डू यू फील अबाउट इट कि अ कंट्री ऑफ मोर देन अ बिलियन पीपल, और वहां पे आप वहां पे जब लोगों से मिलते हैं, हिंदुत्व की जाहिर है एक बैकग्राउंड आ रही है, तो हाउ डू यू फील एंड हाउ डू यू रिप्रेजेंट योर कंट्री एंड योर सेल्फ देयर इन जर्मनी?
Yeah, the one thing before I tell you that what how I feel now, because I like I told you, I grew up in Kashmir, I studied in Kashmir, and I saw over the years how Kashmir is one place. It's just like it's the one of the most beautiful places on this planet.
Very true, very true.
Yes. And I have seen with my own eyes how one after another Indian government mishandled that situation, how they turned that heaven into living hell.
Oh my God.
I mean, I just like I grew up in the 60s and 70s and 80s. I knew that this Kashmir, it was the charm of living in Kashmir was it's a completely different exotic experience.
Mm,
And now I meet people who these youngsters who were born after the start of conflict. And when I talk to them, throughout their lives, they have never seen anything other than gunfights, curfews, and humiliations by Indian security forces. You go out of your home, you are frisked, then you take a bus. Bus can be stopped anywhere. Everybody is compelled to get down and get frisked by again and shoved and pushed. So then in the evening, when you come back home, it's possible that you cannot enter your home because it has been cordoned off by
mm,
security forces. And then there is no guarantee that at the midnight there's a knock and Indian security forces are just barging in and pulling everything upside down. So this is what people have experienced it there over and over again. So when I talk to those youngsters who were born after 90, so their way of their psychology is completely different. So there's a fear. They fear. They like when they see people when it gets dark, they get worried that probably we should go back home. They still
mm.
have that fear. So this is
Very
the,
true.
but in general, people in West, they know what is happening in Kashmir.
Mm.
So it's just like a governmental level. So it's the business is more important. India is a
Right.
big market, and but
Yeah.
otherwise, it's true what's happening in Kashmir. Everybody knows.
Everybody is pained actually, and we feel the pain, and I
Yeah,
can feel your pain also, क्योंकि आप जिस तरह बात करते हैं, because you belong to Kashmir, so you know the intricacies involved in it. तो आई कैन फील योर पेन डॉक्टर अजीब, मुझे यकीन करें कि बहुत दुख होता है, क्योंकि मैंने मैंने सारी जिंदगी कश्मीर के लिए हमेशा एक अपने अंदर सॉफ्ट कॉर्नर रखा है, और उसके लिए हमने हमेशा उसकी आवाज बुलंद करने की कोशिश की है. But people like you who belong to Kashmir, they are really pained, and it
no,
saddens me.
it's such an unfortunate episode of history
Hmm.
that, and it's just like it's not just for that one cannot just blame this BJP government. The India as such, India as a country mishandled Kashmir always.
Hmm.
They always had this idea of assimilation.
Hmm. हाँ,
Assimilation. That
कि
was the
उसको
problem.
एसिमिलेट कर लिया जाए. ठीक.
Yeah,
ठीक है.
that was the
थैंक
problem.
यू डॉक्टर अजीब, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया.
Thank you very much.
नेक्स्ट टाइम वी विल डू इट इंशाल्लाह विद मोर विगर एंड मोर जील, क्योंकि मैं चाहता हूं कि आप, एक तो ये कि आज आपको थोड़ा सा जरा गले में प्रॉब्लम था, लेकिन नेक्स्ट टाइम इंशाल्लाह उम्मीद है कि ठीक हो जाएगा, और
No
हम
problem.
अच्छी तरीके से बात करेंगे, और बाय दैट टाइम इंशाल्लाह हो सकता है कि कोई अच्छी खबरें भी कश्मीर से आए हमें, लेकिन उम्मीद तो नहीं है कि इनके होते हुए कोई अच्छी खबर आएगी.
Actually, the world is now in a very precarious moment at this
हम्म.
stage.
ठीक बात. ठीक बात.
So, because the world economy might be in trouble, and then there
हाँ.
is political trouble brewing in many places.
ठीक.
So,
So thank you very much, Dr. Ajit. See you very soon, and enjoy your time. I was
thank you.
आपकी I hope your vacations were wonderful in Sweden, और
Thank you.
इंशाल्लाह फिर मुलाकात होगी जी. Thank you very much. बहुत
Thank you.
शुक्रिया. Bye bye.